Well, hello and welcome to another episode of In Conversation with Benedict Rogers, an interview series produced by Hong Kong Watch, where we talk in each episode to different people, either from Hong Kong or politicians and public figures around the world who have an interest in the situation there. And I'm really delighted to welcome as our guest this week, Joey Siu. Joey is a prominent activist from Hong Kong. She's the vice president of the City University of Hong Kong's student union and the former spokesperson of the IAD HK Students International Affairs Delegation, which represented 12 Hong Kong student unions abroad. She's also an advisor to IPAC, the Interparliamentary Alliance on China, as am I. So we're fellow IPAC advisors, and an activist campaigning against sexual violence and for gender equality, and also doing a lot of work on the role of technology in China. And she has testified at the United Nations in Geneva, the US Congress Foreign Affairs Committee, and has met with at least 60 parliamentarians from 8 countries around the world. That's an amazing record. So welcome, Joey, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, Ben. It is my honor to be here.
Thank you. Joey, maybe I could start just by asking a little bit of further background about when and how you got involved in activism and in the democracy movement in Hong Kong.
Well, so it was in last year. It was in June. So every year we've got our general election for our student union. But then for last year, nobody was running for the election, so the seats are vacant. And then one of my friends asked me and said, "Hey, Joey, do you want to join me to be nominated by the Student Union Council to be a member of the student union? Because I felt like you would be a very great external vice president." And I actually hesitated because I felt like I would not be able to do a very great job. But then because my friend convinced me and talked to me for a lot of times, and he felt like we can make a change for our students, we might be able to make a change in Hong Kong. So then I decided, and I say, yes, I'm willing to work with you and try to see what can we do for the school and also for the society. So then I was nominated by the Student Union Council, and then very soon our social movement broke out, which is about the anti-extradition bill movement in Hong Kong. So ever since then, we had been working on organizing local protests, class boycott campaigns. We had been trying to organize different kinds of forums, talks, and seminars to educate our students and also the society on Hong Kong's core values and everything about Hong Kong. Yes, and then it was last year when it was July that somebody approached to the student activists and said, well, right now, the US Congress is talking about the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act. And we felt like with your role as a student activist, we felt like you might be willing to participate and to go to the US and to advocate for the act. So, and then I thought, yeah, I am willing to do that because I felt like we had been doing a lot locally already. And I am willing to try and explore the opportunities and possibilities to further contribute to Hong Kong. So then we founded the IAD, and then I have been going on for a lot of advocacy trips to meet with parliamentarians from the UK, from the US, Canada, Germany, and a lot more countries. And we talked about not only the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act, but also the Magnitsky sanctions. And for now, we are talking about the lifeboat schemes for providing a plan B and for providing an alternative for Hong Kong protesters.
That's amazing. In such a short space of time, you've done so much. Following the imposition of the national security law in Hong Kong at the beginning of July, several key activists have now left Hong Kong, and others have been arrested and charged and facing potentially very serious, very long prison sentences. What do you think is the state of the movement now, both in Hong Kong and outside Hong Kong? And how do you think it can be kept alive on the ground and around the world?
Well, after the implementation of the national security law, we are very greatly restricted because we can no longer organize assemblies, rallies, or we can't even talk about the Chinese Communist Party, or even to talk about anything related to self-determination, and not to mention Hong Kong independence in on ground. So I felt like, and it is also very disheartening seeing that a lot of prominent activists have to flee Hong Kong so as to continue their advocacy. But then I believe it is a good choice for both themselves and also from Hong Kong, because we have to have activists on the ground to continue our advocacy. For example, we still have to develop, to contribute to the Yellow Economic Circle on ground, and we still have a lot of things to do about the self-censoring both in campuses and in the media companies on ground. And in terms of the international arena, we believe that prominent activists that have fled Hong Kong has a lot to do. For example, we still have to continue to advocate for different acts, for example, for the Safe Harbor Act in the US, for Magnitsky sanctions in the European Union, in the UK, and also about the lifeboat programs in Canada and in the other countries. So we believe that there are still a lot for us to do, no matter that it's on ground or outside of Hong Kong. I mean, although we are very greatly restricted by the national security law, we Hong Kongers we are very creative, and then we are still trying to explore every possibility to sustain our movement.
Yeah, I absolutely agree about the creativity. I've noticed, for example, the most recent example was the high school student who sat on the MTR platform reading the Apple Daily newspaper, and I couldn't believe that he was surrounded by police and cordoned off just for doing an act that all of us would think is a normal day-to-day act, reading a newspaper. In fact, I actually went to my local railway station in London and took a photo reading the Apple Daily myself in solidarity with him. But those kind of creative gestures on the ground, I think, are very powerful. Joey, what you've touched on some of the things that you're advocating for internationally, but what's your assessment of the world's response to the situation in Hong Kong so far? Do you think it has been enough, and is there more that governments can and should do?
Well, about the attention or things that we have done for Hong Kong, it's never enough, because we still have a lot to do regarding the very aggressive expansion of the Chinese Communist regime and for the freedom and also democracy in Hong Kong. So for example, we have the Magnitsky sanctions in the US, and the US did sanction some of the Chinese and Hong Kong officials, but then we still have a long way to go to get the other European countries, to get Canada or the other countries to follow the suit and to impose sanctions on these human rights abuses. We still have a long way to go. And especially after the implementation of the national security law, we can actually foresee a large number of Hong Kong protesters or activists that will be forced to leave the city very soon. So we still have a lot to do to provide a lifeboat scheme for them so that they can have a choice to relocate to countries that would provide them a shelter and to live in a safe environment. So yes, there is a lot of stuff for us to do, and it is also very important for us to not only to focus on advocating for policies. To talk with the politicians. It is also very important and significant for us to also educate and to talk to the citizens, the people in the other countries, because in my opinion, it is there are still a lot of people who does not fully understand how dangerous the Chinese communist regime could be. So there is a long way to go for us to get the world to be alerted by the very aggressive expansion of the Chinese Communist Party.
Absolutely, I totally agree with that, and that's obviously part of our task in Hong Kong Watch to make sure not just parliamentarians but the general public are better informed. This week, in fact, just earlier today, we launched a new campaign to specifically highlight the plight of 12 Hong Kongers in jail in mainland China. I wrote an article in Hong Kong Free Press earlier today, and in a few moments we might talk a little bit about the social media campaign that we've launched. But before we do that, perhaps you could just tell us the background to the 12, a little bit about who are they, how did they end up in jail in China, what do we know about their current situation, and what are the demands that their families are particularly making?
Sure. So over the past year, there have been over 10,000 of Hong Kong protesters that have been arrested by the police, and a lot of them were charged with rioting or other very serious criminal offenses under the Public Order Ordinance. And especially after the implementation of the national security law, a lot of us are feeling that we might not be able to stand a fair trial in Hong Kong. So some of them decided to flee Hong Kong to go to the other countries to seek political asylum. So that includes the 12 Hong Kongers that are now detained in China. So they tried to escape to Taiwan by a speedboat on the 23rd of August, and then, but very unfortunately captured by the Chinese authority on the 23rd of August, and then they had been detained in Shenzhen right now for over 50 days, and the Chinese authority is about to charge them with illegal border crossing, and they will be standing a trial in China, and we have not heard from them ever since the arrest. And the families and friends are extremely worried because the lawyers appointed by the families had not been able to visit them. And we don't know whether the 12 Hong Kongers are being tortured. We don't know whether they are receiving fair treatment. We don't know whether they have a trusted lawyer to stand for them. So the situation is really, really worrying. And regarding the case, the families of the 12 protesters had made 4 demands. So the first one would be the access to trusted lawyers appointed by the family. And the second one is to make sure that the 12 Hong Kongers receive the appropriate medical care and support that they might need. And the third one would be their contact to their family to tell them that they are safe and not being tortured. And the fourth one would be an immediate release of them, because we felt like they have to be in Hong Kong to stand for the trial, and that would be a rather fair one than to stand a trial in China, because we all know that the judiciary system in China is so corrupted, so non-transparent, and we are worried that they're not able to receive a fair trial in China. And I felt like the significance of the whole case is that it is not only about the 12 Hong Kongers that are being detained in China without being able to contact the outside world. It is about the close imprisonment that have been existing in China for so many years. I mean, over the past years, we have seen so many human rights activists being detained in China. They had been tortured in prison. They had not been able to stand a fair trial. So this issue is not only about the 12 Hong Kongers, but also about the human rights conditions in China. And I feel like it is really, really important for the international society, for democracies in the free world to pay attention to the issue, because we have to hold China accountable for its human rights abuses for over the past years. And it is not only about the safety of the 12 Hong Kong people, but it is also about the hundreds of thousands of human rights activists and the human rights lawyers in China.
Absolutely. You've talked about the international community. What specifically do you think that politicians and governments around the world can do to help the 12 practically?
Well, it would be very, very important to be brave enough to speak up, to be able to stand up against the Chinese communist regime, because the issue had been, I mean, the issue of close imprisonment have been happening in China for so many years, and for now they are even detaining Hong Kongers, which they claim that Hong Kong should be enjoying an independent judiciary procedure and things like high degree of autonomy, one country, two system. And apparently China is right now violating all these promises that she made in the past years. So it is very important for us, for politicians worldwide, to stand up against China about it and to hold China accountable. And for the case of the 12 Hong Kongers, I know that some of them are BNO holders. So for the UK government, it is really important for the UK government to speak up to China. And it would be very helpful if the UK government could be providing counseling services to the BNO holders, because it is the responsibility for the UK government to take care of their citizens. And for the other countries, it is also very important for us to give a signal to China that we are not ignoring the case. We will be holding China accountable. And if China is abusing basic human rights, if China is denying the access to lawyers, if China is not respecting the basic human rights, we will be sanctioning China. And that would be something that politicians worldwide in every country could be doing.
Absolutely. What do you think the general public can do to participate in this? And maybe you could say something about the social media campaign that you and I, together with Hong Kong Watch, have launched today. That's perhaps something that viewers and the general public can engage in, but perhaps there are other things as well that people can do.
Well, we all can do something for the 12 Hong Kongers and also for the others who have been detained in China prisons for, in a very simple way. For example, so as you have mentioned that you and I and also Hong Kong Watch has launched this campaign about posting a picture on social media platforms with the hashtag Save 12 Hong Kong Youth, and also to tag 3 friends to spread the word. And I think this is a very simple and easy thing for us, for the general public to engage in, because we need the momentum from the general public to sustain the attention from the international community. And it is very important for us to speak up and to talk about the issue in a continuous way on social media platforms, because we have to bring up the issue not only in Hong Kong, so not only in the local Hong Kong community, but also in terms of the international arena. And it would be very helpful for us to get the hashtag Save 12 Hong Kong Youth trending on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, so that we can get people from the other countries to get to know more about the situation, pay attention to the situation. And by having public attention, I think we would be more effective in getting politicians and government to actually do something regarding 12 Hong Kong protesters.
Absolutely. It is amazing how a very simple and easy and quick action, it takes just a few seconds to write that hashtag on a piece of paper, take a photograph of it, tweet it and post it on Facebook, and tag 3 friends. So I hope that those who are watching this will do that. It just takes a few seconds, and you can look at either my Twitter feed or Joey's Twitter feed or Hong Kong Watch's to see examples of this. But the more people doing this, the more attention and light that it will shine on the situation for the 12. Why? In a way, you've already answered this question, actually. But I was going to ask, what do you think the consequences of inaction will be, both for the 12 themselves, but also for what it means for actually our own freedoms if we don't take a stand?
Well, so over the past years, we have witnessed how China is abusing basic human rights, and those human rights values are are universally upheld core values of our democracies around the globe. So it is very important for us to speak up against China. It is very important for us to stand up against China and not to tolerate China from abusing human rights and then escaping from their responsibilities anymore. Because we have seen how China is abusing the Hong Kong people over the past years with police brutality, with violating its promises about high degree of autonomy, about one country, two system, and the other promises made on the Sino-British Joint Declaration, and also as written in our basic law. So we have seen how is China abusing the human rights in Hong Kong. And we have seen how aggressive China is about militarily invading Taiwan. And we have also seen that how China is trying to implement the surveillance technology in African countries. And we have seen China, how is it trying to infiltrate into different layers of our society in UK, in the US, in Canada, in Australia, and in every other countries. So we have seen that the expansion of China, the infiltration of China, China's united front has become a problem for all of us. And if we are not doing anything regarding this, we are only allowing China to encroach our core values. We are allowing China to destroy all the universal values that is the fundamental parts of our democracies. And we are only allowing China to destroy the future for our next generations. So it is very, very important for us not only to talk about, not only to speak up against China, but also to take concrete actions to stand against China, to contain the very aggressive expansion of the Chinese communist regime. So that is why we have been advocating for Magnitsky sanctions against the Chinese officials, because it would be the one and very effective way for us to hold them accountable.
Absolutely agree. So it's really not just about the freedoms of Hong Kongers or even the freedoms of people throughout China. It's actually about freedom itself and our own freedoms. And I see in the UK in various ways exactly the challenges that you've highlighted. I know Hong Kong students in the UK who face intimidation in universities from the CCP. Even I myself, in a small way, it's nothing by comparison with what Hong Kongers face, but I've received anonymous, vaguely kind of threatening letters to my home, my neighbors, even my mother. So the lengths that the CCP is prepared to go are extraordinary, and I absolutely agree that we must stand up to them and stop this, both for the sake of Hong Kongers, but for the sake of our own freedoms as well.
Yes, because we're seeing that China is not only abusing human rights and also our core values inside China itself, but also to the other countries. For example, they had been sending threatening letters to you, to the other activists in countries outside of China. They had been harassing Hong Kong students and also other foreign students in university overseas to stop them from supporting Hong Kong or to stop them from protesting against the Chinese communist regime. So we can see how aggressive China is in terms of like controlling and to suppressing the freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, and also other core values of ours, even outside of China. So that is why it is really, really important for us, for the foreign governments, to stand up against China, because you're not only protecting Hong Kong or Taiwan or Xinjiang or Tibet, you're also protecting your own people, your own generations. Yeah.
My last question, just looking back at the last very dramatic 12 months for Hong Kong, what are your feelings and reflections about the very high price that Hong Kong activists have paid, and what are your hopes and goals for the future, and what keeps you going despite all the terrible things that we've seen in the last year?
Well, it was a very, very difficult year for not only me or other activists, but to all Hong Kong people or people who are supporting Hong Kong. It is very hard for us to witness all kinds of police brutality, all kinds of suppression from the Hong Kong government and the Chinese government. And it is also very difficult for us to see how the Chinese Communist government is trying to suppress our core values. But then seeing all the sacrifices that Hong Kong protesters and the people who had been supporting Hong Kong have made, it has become the motivation for us, for me, for other activists to continue with our advocacy and to continue to stand up and then voice out for Hong Kong, because we know that the only way to make the sacrifices meaningful is to continue to stand up against the Chinese Communist regime until it was held accountable for its abuses on human rights and on the other core values. And we know that it is going to be a very long, very difficult battle. So me myself is prepared for fighting with the Chinese Communist regime in the long term. And for my future, I plan to continue with my advocacy, to continue advocating for Hong Kong and also for other groups that are under suppression of the Chinese Communist regime in terms of the international arena. So I will continue to talk and to speak with foreign politicians to advocate for acts in protection of Hong Kong's freedom and democracy. And also I will also stand up for Uyghurs, Tibetans, Taiwanese, and all other people under the suppression of the Chinese government, because I felt like it is very, very important for us to stand shoulder to shoulder, to stand in solidarity, so that we became a stronger, a more unified force to fight against this very, very strong, very evil regime in China. Yes, and I think it is very important for us to reflect on our movement last year, that we've seen sometimes a little bit of like dispute or even like division, and I think. But then Hong Kong is very, very quickly figured out that we have to be united so that we can be, stronger together to stand up against the Chinese Communist government. So I feel like it is very important for us to always bear in mind that we have to stand in unity so we can fight against the Communist Party in a more effective way.
That's an excellent note to end on, and I agree entirely with that message, both in terms of the importance of Hong Kongers being united in the movement for democracy, because history shows that movements that are united stand a chance of winning in the end, but movements that are divided, it's much more difficult. So unity within the movement is really important, but I also really agree with you about the need for greater unity between the different people groups who are suffering under the CCP, Hong Kongers, Uyghurs, Tibetans, and others. And in fact, later tonight, I'm actually speaking online, but to an audience in Bristol, about the Uyghur situation. And the title is Never Again, All Over Again, because every time there is a genocide, we all say never again, and we don't seem to learn from it. So I really agree with you about the need to stand together and build as the CCP has their united front, so we need our united front to counter it. Joey, thank you so much for your time, for joining us in this episode. And I just remind people watching this once again that please join the social media action that Joey and I together with Hong Kong Watch have launched. Just the simple act of writing the hashtag Save 12 HK Youths on a piece of paper, take a photograph, tweet it and tag 3 friends, and hopefully we can get a snowball effect on social media that will help highlight their plight. So Joey Siu, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. My honor.